In our top story this hour, taxi organisation Santaco says a taxi fare increase may be on the cards in light of the steep fuel price hike that will take effect come Wednesday. Santaco's president, that's Philip Tybos, says the national executive will meet tomorrow to chart a way forward. Last night, the Energy Department announced that the price of petrol would rise to R1.34, diesel will go up by 82 cents and illuminating paraffin by 63 cents a litre. Well, this hike will include the annual fuel and the road accident fund levies. The Department of Energy's Robert Marquez says among the reasons for this increase are international factors, such as the cost of importing both crude oil and finished products. The weaker rand against the dollar contributed around 28 and 30 cents to the prices, and the higher crude oil prices affected the price of petroleum products. For Gauteng, the transport cost adjustment is around 5.7 cents per litre, and it will be different in other provinces in the country. Well, we're now joined in our Durban studio, that's by Mr. Visvin Reddy from the Petrol Must Fall Movement, to discuss the impact of petrol hikes on citizens and their day-to-day lives. Thank you, Mr. Reddy, and welcome to the SABC News Desk.
Thank you, Keshni. It's a pleasure being in your studio this afternoon.
For South Africans really feeling the pinch right now, and I just want to garner your initial response to yet another petrol price hike at this juncture.
The recent and the latest fuel increases, the fuel hikes, including the increase in paraffin, is going to have a catastrophic impact on all South Africans, especially the poorest of the poor in this country. It shocks us as an organization, People Against Petroleum Price Increases, that this ANC-led government is oblivious of the fact that we live in a country where over 55% of our people are living in abject poverty. 26 million of them have just one meal a day, and 14 million of South Africans do not even have a meal to go to bed with. So this is the reality in the country. They are completely oblivious of the fact that fuel increases impacts directly on the price of food. It impacts on our farmers. It has an impact on our transport costs. Everything goes up. What makes matters worse is that our unemployment rate in the country is close to 30%. How do we expect unemployed young people to go and find a job when the cost of transport is so high? We believe that this government has put in the wrong people in key portfolios.
And
that is why we are in this predicament we are in today.
Yes, this is a stark reality we all face at this juncture in the country. What would you like to see happen from government side on this? They did intervene last year to the tune of something like 500 million rand. Do they have the space to maneuver right now?
We don't want the government to do what it did the last time. It acted on impulse because of the pressure that we were putting as the public, as South Africans, to ensure that the government did something, and they took money out of the treasury, 500 million rand, to try and cushion the impact of fuel increases. We don't want that. What we want is, number one, to get rid of fuel taxes. 40% of what we pay in our petrol and diesel costs go to fuel taxes, and the fuel taxes are going to pay for corruption in government, and it is estimated that over 700 billion rand has been lost through corruption in the past few years, and this is why we are paying high prices in fuel. So we're saying remove taxes from fuel prices. That's number one. Recover those taxes from what we call a wealth tax. Now, in 2014, Trevor Manuel introduced to Cabinet a proposal which would have seen monopoly industries that's listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, where currently there are trillions sitting in reserves, that these monies could be used to pay for things like your free education, for state expenses. But currently, we are paying for government bungling and government corruption through our taxes, and that is the bottom line. Secondly, government needs to look at Sasol. Every time the fuel prices go up, Sasol makes huge profits. Sasol is a local-based company that makes its fuel from coal. It does not rely on crude oil. So why is it that we pay the same for Sasol and other fuels that are being imported? This simply doesn't make sense. But this is as a result of the fact that we have incompetent people that's put in key positions. Let me explain. The CEO of the Central Energy Fund was fired recently. The CEO of the other state-owned entities, like the Public Investment Corporation, has been fired. CEO of Eskom has been fired. CEO of SAA has been fired. CEO of PRASA has been fired. I think it's time that this ANC government needs to be fired. We cannot continue living in a country where people are mismanaging our state resources to the point where our people are suffering. These fuel increases are having a catastrophic impact on the people of this country. And unless the government decides that it's going to change what it's doing, change its modus operandi, the people are going to have the ultimate protest, and that is going to be on the 8th of May, where we are going to say to the government that it's time that you stop kicking the people in this country in the teeth.
Vers, how do we alleviate the burden in the long term? Because you're calling for calls to scrap fuel levies, the sugar tax, sin taxes, etc. So how do we make up the shortfall in the fiscus going forward? Because aren't we just simply then kicking the can forward?
The answer is simple. In fact, it goes to an ANC resolution that was made in the early 90s, which said that we must introduce a wealth tax on monopoly industry. The big companies in this country are making massive profits from our country's resources and taking these profits outside. They're owned by foreign companies, but the problem lies in the fact that our ANC government officials and leaders, many of them are compromised today because they serve on the boards of these companies, and that's how they've amassed great wealth. And so what they're doing is they're protecting the interest of these companies. We are saying if you introduce a wealth tax on monopoly industry, you'll be able to remove the taxes from fuel, and that will immediately see a reduction of 40% in our costs. And we must warn the government. We are warning this ANC government that fuel prices can have a direct impact on elections. I cannot believe that a government that's going to be asking people to vote for it in a month's time is increasing fuel, is increasing electricity, is increasing water, it's making increasing VAT, doing all of this before an election. This must be an insane government to do such a thing. So we're saying that there are other sources of funding that the government can use. We're also saying that those that are involved in corruption must be nailed and jailed. Corruption is costing this country. It's costing every South African taxpayer. It's costing every person who uses fuel. It's costing us money because we're paying for corruption in this country.
That's Mr. Visvin Reddy. Thank you for your time on the SABC News Desk. Joining us from our Durban studio, he of course is from the Petrol Must Fall Movement.